Welcome back to Q Dads, guys. It's me, Ben, and yes, I'm here today with a side-by-side comparison of the opening sequence to Foundation for Season 1, 2, and of course, number 3. So don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you want to keep up to date with everything Foundation and of course, sci-fi related shows. So I'm going to be breaking this down scene by scene for you. But before we do that, let's actually watch it side by side. So the first thing that we see is a difference in the opening sequence, is that black hole right at the beginning, and pretty much there's minimal difference between season 1 and 2, other than probably the size of the black hole itself. But then as we move into season 3, we then see these rings forming around it, which are very similar to those rings that we saw on planet Trantor. Now, I've stipulated before that the planet Trantor could act as quite a large jump ship itself. So is this what we're looking at? Are they now discovering a way to harness the power of a black hole? Not whether necessarily it jumps through in space, but maybe generates enough power to deliver something else. We then get a couple of scenes that don't really look like much has changed as the ships kind of are introduced and fly through space. Again, great visual detail though. But our next small change is within the statue, which I believe to be Calais. Please do correct me if I'm wrong. But from season 2 to season 3, there doesn't seem to be much that has actually changed. But still, there's that prominent device within her hand, yet it's season 1 to season 2, which is the biggest difference, revealing that character in a slightly different capacity. And then yes, we skip through the Radiant as we now get to the ships. Now, there is a difference here for each season, which again was just brilliant to see. So the first season had those initial jump ships that we kind of saw Empire use throughout that first season, where they have that protruding section at the bottom, which I presume is for balance as it kind of glides and drifts through space. Now, these were most commonly appearing as they were jumping outside of Terminus towards the end of that season. And then in season 2, we do get to see these ships that were taking on the Invictus, I believe. It was in the end of that season where we kind of saw these ships drop down. And of course, Pellis won, or our good friend Glaywin, who obviously got hit at the end of season 2 and ended up falling into Terminus to spend then the rest of his days on the vault itself. Now, of course, this leads us to this season's opening sequence and the ships that we have. Now, I don't think we've actually seen these yet, and I don't think they were the ones that we saw in episode 1. And based on the fact that season 1 and season 2's intro had those ships where they were predominantly shown at the back end of a season, I don't think we're going to see these until the end of season 3. Is this some kind of new technology that Empire has? Or are these the fighter ships that the Foundation have been progressing with, especially considering we've now jumped forward another 152 years? I will love to see the capability of these ships, especially on just based on that look alone, and considering that the Foundationers now have the spacer technology within them. This is going to be a game changer. And then we move to the flag of Empire, which hasn't changed, but I still want to touch on it all the same. So the reason why I kind of want to touch on this flag is that that main reason, it hasn't changed. Since season 1, 2 and 3, it's been exactly the same, which kind of represents Empire and that whole Cleonic dynasty. It's not changing, it's not progressing with time, it's not advancing as the world moves around it. So the fact that they are staying the same is probably the reason for the upcoming Empire downfall. Now, up next we have the statues. Now, first of all, before I talk about these statues themselves, obviously they are representing Empire and Day, to be more precise, as they kind of lead the Cleonic dynasty. But one of the first things that I want to mention is, if you notice in season 1, it actually plays the opposite direction to season 2 and 3, meaning that we are watching the growth of the Cleonic dynasty and their rise to power, and pretty much how they were almost destined to be. That was until psychohistory got thrown into the mix. And then obviously with season 2 and 3, they begin to move backwards as we now start to see the decline of the Cleonic dynasty. Now, it's worth pointing out here that the ones in season 1 are pretty much intact. Season 2 are kind of crumbling away and you can see the cracks now starting to show. Whereas season 3, some of them have completely lost their heads, meaning that that legacy is failing very quickly. And it's worth noting as well that just before we flick scenes, we actually get to see a bearded statue, which of course represents our bearded Day, or Crazy Day as we're going to call him, within season 3. And then we move forward to the statue of a woman. Now, I'm not actually 100% sure who this is. There is speculation that this is Queen Sareth, and then it shows in the first season her being shrouded, not known yet. The Cloud Dominion wasn't kind of mentioned until the start of the second season. And of course, that's when we kind of, the veil drops. We see her coming into who she is and her plans to take down that genetic dynasty. And then obviously in season 3, it shows her still alive, but almost thriving still. And I'll touch on that in just a moment. But again, as I mentioned, season 1 had that, mystery, the shroud over the figure. Season 2, if you actually look closely, you can see the cloth falling from the bottom of the statue, meaning that that character is only just being unveiled, only just kind of stepping into the position that they need to be in. And then if you look closely at the bottom for season 3, that baseline or foundation, I want to say, is a lot greener. It's now flourishing and starting to grow. So again, if this is Queen Sareth, is she now in her element? Is she thriving somewhere else? Or essentially her offspring are thriving somewhere else and ready to kind of take over Empire altogether? But I do wonder, if it isn't Queen Sareth, who it could be. And either way, it feels to me like a safe haven. Could it potentially be the home of the second foundation? Everything else, the deserts, the ocean, is kind of bleak and crumbling around them, whereas the bottom, the base of that statue, seems to be the heart where everything thrives and of course survives, which is why it could be the second foundation. And then we skip through the Radiant yet again, but this time to reveal 3 statues. And obviously we're talking about the 3 seasons here. So season 1, I'm not actually sure who that is. I think it's just kind of a generic statue. But it's the baseline, before we move into season 2, where the focus switches to Harry. And of course, psychohistory, his overall plan for humanity to survive. And then yes, we dive into season 3, which clearly does show the mule. So I love how we're changing characters, but at the same time, indicating who is calling the shots. But because of the colour red that is symbolised here, and obviously we've seen red symbolised within the Radiant itself when it predicts those crises or the chaotic events, especially when Sal and Gale were looking at them in the start of season 2. So with the red representing the potential danger that lurks ahead, could the red within these statues also represent a danger? Not sure in season 2 who Harry or AI Harry, or which version we should follow and which version is right. And then again in this season, representing the mule, who we know is a bad character and is potentially going to stop both Empire or Foundation from succeeding and ultimately being the cause of the Dark Ages. And we then get a beautiful shot of Demoiselle as she slowly becomes more unveiled. From season 1 being a full statue, to season 2 having that decay and starting to show, and then in season 3 having her full robot face revealed. Now, what this means is that we are soon to see the true Demoiselle, or even her descendants, because if you remember from the trailer, she was holding the skull of another robot. So I think in this season, we're going to be diving a little deeper and uncovering more about Demoiselle, or even the robot wars in general. And then we come to the final change of the season, and it's all about the hand, or the person that's carrying the Radiant. So in season 1, it was clearly a male hand, the hand of Hari Seldon, and putting us on his journey as Psycho history really starts to take off. And then as we move into season 2, it's a female hand, which of course could be either Gale or Sal, more likely to be Gale because of that possession of the Radiant. But then we move into season 3, where now we have 2 hands trying to hold it together. And I say trying because they are female hands, so this is obviously the hands of Demoiselle. And if you notice, the hands are actually crumbling apart. She's trying to contain the Radiant and keep everything on track, but yet she's failing. You know, it was all about this paradox that she spoke about in the first episode of the season, where her programming is designing her to ensure Empire's survival at all costs. But yet the Radiant is showing her that no matter what she does, they're going to die and it's going to end. She's stuck again between those 2 hands. She can't quite figure it out, and she's really struggling on this. And other than that, we have on the left hand side, which seems to be some kind of structure or ship, or potentially a base of the second foundation. I'm not 100% sure on what these other elements are, so if you do know, please hit me up in the comments. But of course, no book spoilers, guys. We do cover this from a TV show perspective only. So if you do have anything that you want to throw to us, just be very vague or keep it to yourself. But of course, I hope that you did like this side-by-side comparison, and of course my little breakdown of some of those other details. But if there is anything that I did miss or didn't talk about in full detail, then hit me in the comments, guys. Let's have that conversation. And of course, don't forget to hit that subscribe button as we keep you up to date with everything Foundation. And if you haven't already seen our breakdown for episode 1, head over to the channel now. So as always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time with something new.